Hey y'all, what's up? My name is Jess. Welcome back to my garden here at Roots and Refuge Farm. Today is our weekly garden tour. I think it's the 12th week in the season. I'm starting to lose count because we're really getting pretty deep into it. I'm really excited about today's tour. It's sort of like the transition week. The garden's still producing a lot, but I'm also beginning to think about the next season, the next wave, essentially the late summer and fall planting. And so you're gonna see a lot of blank spaces, kind of have started pulling some things out and getting prepared for what's going in next. But we're also still harvesting a lot of stuff because it's the middle of July. It's kind of like the peak of the year right now as far as bringing in a ton of fruit every day. So before we jump into looking at the gardens this week, I just wanted to say a huge thank you. A couple days ago, I sort of made a kind of very brief announcement about my new book that's coming out. I've been working on it for the last several months, and it is now available for pre-order, so the cat's out of the bag. I had to keep it quiet for a while, but I wrote a book, and it is for new gardeners who are learning to grow food. It's coming out next February, so still got a little ways yet to wait. So I do imagine it being the perfect timing when everybody is just holed up, completely done with winter, and then getting this book in their hands to kind of help them on their journey. It's full of tips and the kind of information you've come to expect here on my YouTube channel, but I just wanted to be able to put just a clear instruction in writing for people to have whenever they're getting started in gardening. And then this week I mentioned it in my vlog, and within the first day got to experience what it's like to be on Amazon's top 100 list, number 54 actually. Pretty incredible to wake up one morning to that. And so I just want to say thank you guys. Seeing my book cover and my name on that list, I'm having a hard time putting words together, and that's actually saying something for me. So thank you so much. I'll put the link down below to the pre-order on Amazon, as well as the link on the publisher's page where you can check out other retailers and international retailers. So if you're not in the United States, you can check that out because it's going to be available in some other places. And again, I just want to say thank you so much. This has definitely been a labor of love putting this together, and I've spent the entire time thinking of the comments that I get from you guys and the encouragement I get and how much joy it's brought for me to share my garden with you over the last few years. And I just see this as an extension of that, and just continuing to just plant the seeds of the love of gardening in the hearts of other people, and that's just such a passion of mine. So thank you so much. All right, well, let's jump on in it now. Here, I'm up here in the cottage garden. It is looking honestly pretty wild. I've got some very weedy patches, some really beautiful things going on. I think up here, my favorite thing that I am seeing is the roses. I just saw this. Y'all see that little sprig of sweet potato vine? It actually grew up through here. I'm gonna leave it just because I love to let things go wild, but check out this. This is a tricolor sweet potato vine, and this started as two very small starts. It's just absolutely massive. I love it. Everything's looking really great. Up in the front here, I have our asparagus patch. This garden is primarily, it's just a perennial garden. And the idea with this garden was to create a space that would be really beautiful, kind of wild. This is the first year that we put this in, so it's still sort of in an infantile stage. But also, on top of beauty and wildness, we did want to have some food growing as well. So we have berries that go along the fences here. Obviously they're very new, they're just getting established. Down on this side as well, there are berries that go all along there. We have the asparagus in the front. We have quite a lot of herbs throughout here. This is a random ground cherry that just volunteered here because of seeds in our compost. Actually, this is where I come whenever I want ground cherries because my kids don't know this is here. They pick the other ones clean, but this is Mama's ground cherry plant. Look at that big old thing. I just ate all of those and then picked another handful. I've had people tell me with ground cherries that they have a hard time getting them started. That can be the case because they have really tiny seeds and they take a long time to germinate. But I will tell you, once you get them going, you will likely always have them. I have them volunteer all over the place. It was hard the first year. I had a hard time keeping, I had 2 plants I had a hard time keeping alive. And then since then, we've always had them popping up. So I guess that's a benefit. We really like them though, and we still always plant them. And what I did this year is I just started them earlier and made sure to start the seeds on heat mats and keep the soil moist and just really not plant them too deep. And they did very well. This Olivia rose, Austen from David Austen, smells so amazing, so beautiful. I just felt a raindrop. I really hope it doesn't start raining. I want to get through this. Now I haven't harvested noodle beans all week. I still have plenty. They're still good. Some of them have gone too far. You can see here these have already dried up, so I can just save the seeds from these. I have a little temptation sometimes when there's stuff like that that has been let go and gotten away from me to like hide it from you guys, just being honest. But I was really focused on the book this week, so stuff like that I was just like, meh, whatever. And I've decided to make my peace with that. If there's food waste like that in my garden, if there's something that I can't get around to preserving, it's not that big of a deal because I can just compost it or I feed it to my animals. So basically I'll come out here and gather up any of the noodle beans that have gotten too big to eat, and I'll save the seeds off some of them. And if I have anything extra that I don't feel like saving the seeds of, I'll feed them to my animals. There have been times in my journey as a gardener where I would feel just a ton of condemnation over things like that. If something went bad or got too big and I didn't get around to doing something with it, and I would just feel like, oh my goodness, that is like, I'm doing a bad job, I'm a bad gardener, I'm wasteful, whatever, and just take on like these really wrong ideas. And truly, like, part of the gardening journey is that things are going to get away from you. They're going to get too big. You're not always going to be able to do everything with them that you would have hoped. But honestly, like, the times that I've let things go and I've missed out on an opportunity, it makes me more persistent and more determined the next time around to make the most of it. Like, looking back on those times, I don't feel condemned. I feel like more driven. And I've learned to let go moments like this. It's not worth my peace to put up some jars of noodle beans whenever I am, you know, slammed for time. I'm still getting silver slicers. They are starting to get just slightly misshapen in some places here, but still pretty good. The flavor's still pretty good. These are the last variety kicking here. I'm actually not picking these today because I am going to be doing some more canning with cucumbers here probably tomorrow or the next day. I'll just pick them then so they're super fresh. We're getting about to the time of beans. Again, we're gonna have lots and lots of green beans, all these pole beans. Look at them completely covering this beautiful trellis. Got lots of blossoms. So I will probably be harvesting beans in, I would say probably, well, tomorrow. Looky there. Those snuck right up on me. So I've got beans again. So here at the beginning, whenever we just have some, I'll harvest them and cook them with, you know, fresh for dinner. Odds and ends I'll put in the dehydrator to save. These are the rattlesnake pole beans. They're so pretty. They do so well. And then in a week, I probably will be facing enough beans that I'll actually have to do some preserving. So this monstrous melon plant patch, it's actually like 2 or 3 plants. I was debating on wondering what kind they were because they volunteered. Look at this. And they finally started setting some fruit here, and I feel pretty certain that these are chrysanthemum melons, which I've said that was my suspicion. So I'm really pumped about that. I just can't believe how big and beautiful they are. It's just taking over this massive trellis wall. Like, look at this. Isn't that incredible? And then here, this melon. Look at that. Isn't that a beauty? I've got a couple of them down here on the bottom. Now I only have a few small ones growing actually on the trellis, so nothing that's really demanding any sort of support yet. But obviously I've got those couple down on the ground, and I'm just going to watch them. This is my first time growing this variety, which the name means the table's delight. Got the banana plants looking good. And I have a lot of space here in these beds, which this is going to just go for fall planting. I'm just leaving it bare. And here, these hot banana peppers. This is on the list to pickle this week. Hey, Bear. Well, those are a lot hotter than I thought they would be. My goodness. So, we have a lot of sweet banana peppers, which we munch on all the time. And so those being called hot banana peppers, I kind of like sort of imagine that they would be like hottish sweet banana peppers, and they're not. They're definitely not that. They're definitely hot. However, those, I've been putting them in with pickles and stuff to make them spicier. And I don't put a lot in, and they definitely make it a little spicy. But man, those are really spicy. But those would be fantastic as pepper rings to use in recipes to spice things up. My Armenian white cucumbers, melons, they are still producing. I'm letting these get a little bit on the bigger side because I really just want to make lots and lots of relish with them. And I'll also have juiced a couple of these, and it's worked out really well. So that's why I was just like, well, I'll just let these get bigger. You can see some of the silver slicers have climbed their way over here. This plant is getting kind of powdery mildewy, so we'll see how much longer it lasts. I mean, it's still producing a ton. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I missed this one. Oh my goodness, I've never seen this before. What? Oh my goodness. Guys. What in the world? I didn't know they would get this big. I've never let them get this big before. Oh my goodness. Well, I need to know if you can eat it. I'm embarrassing myself today. Okay, so the seeds are big. So this is, like, these seeds are savable. These are developed enough that you could actually save the seeds. It's got the gel around it that a lot of times melons and stuff have. This smells more like a melon than a cucumber now, which this is a melon. It's actually really good. Like, I was gonna go throw this to the pigs, but I'm not. So what's going on here is this tastes like, it's the texture of a melon, like a honeydew melon, and it smells faintly of honeydew, like kind of sweet, but it tastes like a cucumber melon. Like, it tastes like a melon that tastes like a cucumber, which is exactly what it is. The skin's not even like super hard. Wow, I feel really excited about this discovery. You know what this would be really good in? Have you ever had like salads with watermelons, like a summer salad that has melon in it? Like, this would be really good as that. Maybe with like a vinegar and maybe like even a sweet vinegar mix, and maybe some other things in it, some onions or tomatoes or something. This is good. So just to be clear, that doesn't taste like a lot. Like, it's got a really, really, really mild flavor, but I bet it would be really refreshing if it wasn't. Like, right now it's out here in a 90-degree garden, so it's not super refreshing right now because it's warm, but I bet cold and maybe marinated, that would be really, really tasty. So I've had multiple people ask me recently if I have any Kajari melons, and I do have these plants growing. They're growing up now. They're starting to get a little sickly looking, but I have hope that they're gonna pull through. So far, I've just got some teeny tiny little fuzzy fruits, but not a whole lot forming. And over here are some more plants. These look like in a little better shape. The melons are just late this year. We've already harvested a handful of watermelons, but not very many small melons, which it's usually the other way around. The blue jade dwarf corn starting to come along. It's really pretty. Now down here, this bed is still empty. I was debating here between saving this to fill it up with winter stuff. I was also thinking about just filling the entire thing with sunflowers, so when you come out here in the fall, it'll just be so striking and lovely. To be honest, I'm leaning towards that option. Yep, here's my other unharvested noodle bean trellis. I don't know, some of these are still pretty edible. I could come out and harvest some, but some of them are getting kind of big. The beans inside are getting kind of big and hard and leathery. So I don't know what I'm going to do. They sure are pretty to look at. There are quite a few things currently in the garden, and that's why I said this is a transition week. These are Parisian pickling cucumbers, and as you can see, they're really drying off and dying back. The handful of cucumbers they're still producing, they're just weird shaped and they're bitter. Over here, I've got dragon tongue bush beans dying off and dying back. My green stalks, the bush beans and those are done. And really now is the time for me to start getting all this stuff out so I can replant and still get something from this space this year. So look at Artie the artichoke. He pulled through. Now these are tiny little artichokes. It's the first year for this plant to flower, and I decided not to cut these, that I'm going to let it flower because I really just want to see what happens in the future. I would really like to plant like an entire bed of artichokes and really try to get a harvest of those for eating. But as of right now, I'm just going to let Artie live his life and see what he makes of it. Oh, hey. I can't believe these are still producing. There's always a handful of strawberries when we come out here. So this little bare trellis has been like a very unimpressive looking part of the spring, early summer garden. But these blue butterfly peas are starting to take off. The zinnias that I planted here are just starting to come up and get buds. And so it's going to be funny because as this dies back, I'll probably replant that with noodle beans. But this will be completely full in the coming months with those blue butterfly peas. It'll be really beautiful. My wild cuckoosies. So they're taking the sunflower down. I need to tie that up and just tie it to the trellis. That sunflower is about probably 13 feet tall from the bed up to where it is. And the cuckoosies have pulled it down and are pulling it to the trellises. These started really slow in setting fruit, but they are now completely covered in gourds. I mean, just all over. There, I can see probably about 25 here. And they get massive. That's a lot of food. Seriously. Check this out. Covered. So many. I did not end up hand pollinating these. They finally just started to pollinate. And they're covered. Alright, I backtracked a little bit because I had to run inside. I didn't stop and really talk much about the cherry tomatoes. They're pretty well harvested right now because the kids got them this morning. This year I did less cherry tomatoes than usual. I think I have about 20 plants and it has been plenty sufficient. I actually worried, I know some of you are going to laugh at me, but I actually worried that I didn't do enough. But they've been very sufficient and I've been happy with them. I never did fill these rows up well this year. This was one of those places where a lot of stuff just didn't really take off. Again, I've got some late melons here and up here. Oh, there's a hummingbird. Did y'all see it? So at this point of the summer, when I've got big open spaces like this, these become the places where the fall stuff goes. And what will likely happen here is I will plant maybe some late summer things in, but once the tomatoes start dying back, we'll take these trellises down, or we won't, and we'll just plant root vegetables underneath them, and we can do beets and turnips and carrots or radishes all underneath these sides of the beds where the trellises of tomatoes are. All right, so the main thing we're going to be harvesting today is tomatoes. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you the kind of tomato it is when I pick it. This is a striped German. This is a much smaller one. Some of my biggest tomatoes this year have been off these few striped German plants. These costoluto genovese, they're starting, there's a blushing one, but it's not ready yet. These are Jersey Devils, not quite ripe yet. I probably not have just a whole lot to harvest. We picked up about 20 pounds yesterday. Now that's interesting. This is a Jersey Devil, but this one is looking really streaky. And actually, a lot of them on this plant are looking streaky. I wonder if this got crossed with something. It's not supposed to be a streaky tomato. Wow. This variety is called Rose, and that one is huge. That's a huge tomato. Here's another rose plant, and there's another really massive tomato underneath it. This one has some pest damage. It's not ripe, but obviously it's got some holes and some bugs going pretty deep. So I'm going to stick this in my basket, throw it to the chickens when we get over there. Here, these are called pineapples. And they're not very big, but they've been pretty consistently the same size and very tasty. Here is a Mr. Stripey. This one will actually probably ripen a little bit more in the house, but it's pretty close. I'm gonna go ahead and pick it because I've been having problems with pests coming and getting my tomatoes when they're getting really ripe. Here's a Hillbilly. That tomato's over a pound. It's a pretty good size. And this plant has a lot on them, like quite a few that are over a pound. Now these are San Marzanos, and there are quite a few fruits on these that are green. I grew San Marzanos years ago, and I actually didn't care for them very much. So this is like my first time coming back to them. And this is the first ripe one that I've had. These are like hailed as one of the best sauce tomatoes that you can grow. And usually with paste tomatoes or sauce tomatoes, you can eat them fresh, but they're not as good for that. They're better for paste or sauce because they're not quite as juicy. And even this one, I'm not gonna bite into it because it's not going to be as good fresh as it would be cooked down in a sauce. But I'm hoping they work out. I've had some people just rave about San Marzanos to me, but I've always just found them to be fairly average. Now, I use my big slicers for everything that I do. And that means making sauce, making salsa. And I'm gonna show you coming, I think Monday. I'm gonna shoot the video tonight or in the morning. I don't know if I'm gonna get around to making it tonight. But I roast everything to go in my salsa, which helps cook off some of the juice, which to me makes up for a slicer having so much juice in it. This is hands down the biggest tomato I've grown this year. Wow. All right, so we're gonna measure this guy in the back when we get back to the scale. This thing is huge. Little green on the shoulders, but I'm gonna go ahead and pick it because it'll finish ripening inside and I don't want it to get damaged. These are Dr. Wyches. I have definitely several of these that are blushing. We've already picked quite a few of these. All right, so I thought this massive one was a Dr. Wyches because it was right here on this row, but I just got to the other side and saw the tag and it was actually a Persimmon. So that's interesting. This is huge. Okay, Persimmon. It's my first year growing this. I've already had several tomatoes off this plant that were close to a pound. That's pretty cool. Hey, here, got some Black Beauties, multiple different sizes. These usually do end up with a little bit of mild cracking for me, but they're always so pretty that I don't mind. This is an Aunt Ruby's German green. Now, if you're growing a green tomato and you're having a hard time deciphering when it's done, just give it a squeeze. Usually the shade of green does turn. You can kind of see how this one has like a little bit of a reddish tint to it, but they also they feel like a ripe tomato. They're nice and soft. Oh my gosh, look at this, guys. It grew up in the trellis. Oh, poor thing. All right, there's my harvest basket. Not bad considering how many we pulled in yesterday. Let's go to the back gardens. Well, so the okra plants here are getting really big. We're still deciding what we're gonna replant where the squash were out here for the fall, but we're definitely doing another round of potatoes, and then of course we have the sweet potatoes and more squash. I don't know if I'm gonna replant this back part. It's wild right now. I may replant it. I don't know yet. There's a lot up in the air right here. We got a lot of decisions to make this week, but I want to get in here before we run out of light. Oh hey, there's a mug I left. Oh wow, yep, it has begun in here. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna harvest all the hybrids out of the Jetstar bed, and I'm gonna weigh them. Actually, no, we're gonna weigh this massive tomato. 1 pound, 12 ounces. That's pretty crazy. Still not a 2-pounder. I haven't got a 2-pounder yet this year, but that's 798 grams. That's a big tomato. This is officially the largest tomato I've grown this year. I have had tomatoes over 2 pounds in the past, but that's the record for the year. Okay, I've been leaving these on here to get really ripe on the vine. Being grown in a high tunnel, they just won't have the same flavors as the ones outside. So I want to make sure they get as much ripeness inside as possible, and also I don't have as many pests back here. I don't have my chickens get in the garden. I don't have birds or squirrels, so I'm letting these get ripe and red on the vine. These are so uniform. Like here, you see this. Now, if this were outside, I would probably go ahead and pick these because getting really ripe like this in my garden is just asking for damage. But out here, I feel okay leaving these another day. Alright, now I'm going to get a weight on these and log them on my little log here for hybrid harvest. Okay, so I had to do that in batches, but that was 4.3 pounds of Jetstars. Okay, I just grabbed these 2 little climbing triple crops. There are quite a few more out here, but I think they would benefit from another day or so on the vine. So I'm gonna wait on these, but I'm gonna be making a pretty good size climbing triple crop harvest probably tomorrow, the next day. Only half a pound, 8.7 ounces of the climbing triple crops. That's okay. I think they might be able to catch up in volume, but they may win in taste testing. All right, so starting to get pretty heavy on the peppers, but I'm still not harvesting a lot. That one's starting to turn colors. I bet we'll be eating that here soon. I need to start really incorporating these into a lot of our cooking, and then also begin with the processing. One of the things I do when I have a lot of peppers, sweet or hot, but specifically hot peppers, and I don't have time to do much with them, is I will just put them in the dehydrator. And it's nice to kind of separate them by type so you know what you're dealing with heat wise, but you can later take dried chilies and you can reconstitute them for cooking. You can soak them, you can ferment them and make like a fermented hot sauce out of dried chilies. You can grind them up and make a powder. And I do like to keep them separate. So I just, that way I'll know these are dried Sugar Rush Peach, or these are dried Anaheims, or these are dried Tabascos, or whatever. That way I really know what kind of heat I'm dealing with. But one year I did just like an odds and end half gallon of all different kinds of dried chilies. It was just a complete mix. It smelled so good. It was so hot. I ended up giving that to a friend that liked hot things because I couldn't do anything with it. It was way too hot. So here's a little Amish paste. When it comes to paste tomatoes, Amish paste has been my preference. I feel like they're not quite as dry inside as the San Marzanos, and also they can get quite large. This is a smaller one, but you can see here they average out a lot of times to be like 8 to 10 ounces each. And I will tell you that one of the only over 2 pound tomatoes I ever grew was an Amish paste. Here, these are Bonnie Bests. They actually split a little bit, but they're still okay. This is one my friend Jen Stivers recommended that she liked last year for canning. And really, whenever you find a variety that stays pretty uniform, they have a really small core like this, they're not super lobed, these make good canning tomatoes. They're just easy to process because you don't have to cut out a bunch of yucky spots and big cores. And while that may be true, my heart is still with big heirloom slicers, and that's what I like to grow the most of. And I don't mind canning them, but I do see the benefit and why people sometimes prefer these more uniform varieties. Hey, look here. Got some classic eggplants coming along. They're not ready yet. I want to let them get bigger than that, but that's exciting. Got a couple of little Thornburns Terracottas here. These are so tasty. One more down here on the end. These have been early producers this year. Okay, so this Abe Lincoln, which it's split, but it looks like it healed. It doesn't look like it's rotting. This one's starting to ripen. And then I see one here starting to ripen, another big old Abe Lincoln. That's pretty exciting. So my black beauties and blue beauties are admittedly not very black or blue in this filtered high tunnel light. You can see just a tiny bit of streaking on this. Now you saw the ones up in the front garden. That's because the light really brings out the anthocyanins, and on this side not only are these filtered by shade cloth, but the sun's coming up over there and going over and then hitting the trees. So these are dealing with a lot of shade right here. They still taste good, but they're not as flash. I probably just won't grow this variety undercover like this again because I don't think it's the best way to really make that shine. Here are my Nadapenos, starting to get pretty heavy, as well as my habanadas. Now these are setting flowers, but I don't have a bunch of peppers on them yet. That's okay. I've got some bell peppers here, And even more Nadapenos over here. So all the peppers just look crazy good. I'm probably gonna be overrun. These are cayennes. I planted too many, but I was wanting to make a year's worth of cayenne pepper, and I don't think that's gonna be an issue. These plants are just completely covered. Well, that's not bad. A little bit shorter tour today. I'm not gonna get into all of this right now because there's just not a whole lot to show that we haven't seen week after week. We're still harvesting a lot of okra every day, and that's gonna continue to be the case. And then with the squash, we're kind of at the point that many things are getting ripe, and I'll start harvesting those, and I'll share that with you guys as we do it, as we pull things out. And of course, we do have a lot of decision making ahead of us of what is gonna be where. We talked this week, and we really want to just use the fullness of our property going into this fall. Because, you know, we don't have any plans for the fall. It looks like the schedule is getting wiped pretty clear. And so what better thing to do than grow a garden? So that's what we're gonna do. You know, another thing that I wanna kind of point out, you know, today you see me kind of sharing some ideas that I have for some food that's currently growing in the garden. Right now, I have somewhere in the range of 35 pounds of tomatoes on my kitchen counter that we've harvested over the last 2 days. And so I know that I'm gonna be processing tomatoes. Like, that's next up. I've got to get those started. And so that's why I went ahead and harvested. Finding the balance in harvesting and processing is just a really hard part about growing a big garden. It's something that is a challenge even for someone who's successful and experienced. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is like right now, okay, I'm gonna finish harvesting the tomatoes, I'm gonna deal with those, and then I can come out and get those peppers. And just leaving them attached to the vine, I've got a little bit of a window that I can do that. You can't do it for a really long time. I've got a little bit of a window that I can do that and then come out later in the weekend or early in the week and get those things and do something with them. There is a learning curve. If you planted too much and you're figuring that out, or you planted everything at once and it's all coming in at once, don't let that steal your joy of gardening. You can say, okay, I need to do this differently next year, and do the very best that you can, and just let it go. Like, if it comes down to it, harvest the lesson that you're gonna do it differently the next year. The next season, that you're gonna pull it out and replant, that you're gonna find other ways of putting things up. Like with tomatoes, if I were genuinely pressed and I needed to get something else canned, I could take those tomatoes and cut the core out, score the bottom, put them in the freezer in bags, and then can them later. That's a valid option. I don't really want to do that right now because we're making a lot of salsa and we're loving having it. So that's kind of where I'm at. But you know, like, you learn those things, you learn those little options of things that you can do, and you do the best you can. So thank you for hanging out with me today. I am melting. It is so hot out here. So I'm gonna go inside, make some salsa. I bless you guys. Until next time.